pairing Taylor Swift and Emily Dickinson on Emily's birthday. I read Taylor Swift's thoughts on security on December 8th, the 45th anniversary of the assassination of John Lennon, who lived and died according to the same rationale. This week, which also marks the birthdays of Swift, December 13th, 1989, and Emily Dickinson, December 10th, 1830, I've been listening to Taylor's 2024 album Tortured Poets Apartment on the car stereo. Since Dickinson died in 1886, too soon for Edison to record her reading poetry that could famously take the top of your head off, I've settled for cocked and fully loaded songs of her Pennsylvania-born sixth cousin 3 times removed. 6 cousins. As far as I can tell, Swift has yet to acknowledge the news reported in the March 4th, 2024 Guardian online, that she and Dickinson both descend from a 17th century English immigrant, Swift's 9th great-grandfather and Dickinson's 6th great-grandfather, who was an early settler of Windsor, Connecticut. Although Swift seemed to indicate a relationship 4 years earlier on December 10th, 2020, by announcing the midnight release of her album Evermore, she made no mention of the fact that it coincided with Dickinson's 190th birthday. Predictably, Swifties everywhere have been busy discovering similarities between Swift's songs and Dickinson's poems, the most popular relationship being that both the song, Evermore, and the album's title were inspired by Dickinson's poem, One Sister I Have in Our House, which ends with the word forevermore. In Emily's house. 14 summers ago, I was in Emily's bedroom, with its big windows facing on Main Street in Amherst. The middle-aged guide was droning on about how Emily loved to play games with children, how widely read she was, how she loved the Brontes, even naming her dog after the one in Jane Eyre. Just as I was feeling the onset of House Tarangwe, the guide delivered the standard message that Dickinson's poetry was the opposite of genteel, airy-fairy verse, and in case I doubt her, she read the poet's own words from a piece of paper trembling in her hands. If I read a book and it makes my whole body so cold no fire can ever warm me, I know that is poetry. If I feel physically as if the top of my head were taken off, I know that is poetry. For a few seconds it was as if the stately old house had spoken to the medium of the guide, who actually seemed embarrassed, as if she'd been making those explosively personal remarks about her head and her body. Later that day, when I bought the Modern Library edition of Dickinson's selected poems, I opened at random to the untitled poem that begins, I know some lonely houses off the road, and felt as I read a chill on my back and a tingle like a touch on the top of my head. Imagination, a loaded gun. In these fevered days, 10 pivotal moments in the making of Emily Dickinson, W. W. Norton 2020, Martha Ackman quotes from a letter 21-year-old Emily sent to her Uncle Joel Norcross. Harm is one of those things that I always mean keep clear of, but somehow my intentions, and me don't chime as they ought, and people will get hit with stones that I throw at my neighbor's dogs and insist upon blaming me instead of stones and tell me that their heads ache. After calling it the greatest piece of folly on record, she refers to a story in which one man pointed a loaded gun at a man, and it shot him so that he died, and the people to the owner of the gun into prison, and afterward hung him for murder, which she says makes him another victim of the misunderstanding of society. As if to make her point, she adds, in the dash-driven style of her verse, now when I walk into your room and pluck your heart out that you die, I kill you, hang me if you like, but if I stab you while sleeping the dagger's to blame, it's no business of mine. Ackman's comment on this stunning statement is that Emily was trying to understand if writers were responsible for feelings they prompted in others, if hurling a word had the same effect as throwing a stone. Was imagination, like a loaded gun, the one pulling the trigger? Emily seemed to say she wanted the freedom to hurl her words without consequences. Ackman places a letter to Uncle Joel, unsurplusly omitted from the 2024 edition of Dickinson's letters, directly ahead of a paragraph about how Dickinson's brother Austin could not always understand what Emily was saying, and it exasperated him. Ackman notes that the letter also prefigures the 1863 poem My Life Had Stood a Loaded Gun, which concludes, For I have but the art to kill, without the power to die. Swift's Quill Songs. 2 years ago, when I read Helena Hunt's anthology Taylor Swift in her own words, Agate 2019, I had no way of knowing if Swift, who also has a brother named Austin, had ever acknowledged the connection with Emily Dickinson. The consensus in the Swiftie universe is that the only time she ever mentioned the Belle of Amherst was in a speech at the Nashville Songwriter Awards in September 2022, where she said, "I categorize certain songs of mine in the Quill style if the words and phrasings are antiquated. If I was inspired to write it after reading Charlotte Bronte or after watching a movie where everyone is wearing poet shirts and corsets. If my lyrics sound like a letter written by Emily Dickinson's great-grandmother while sewing a lace curtain, that's me writing in the Quill genre." In fact, Swift's lyrics and Dickinson's poems seldom, if ever, resemble anything written by anyone's lace curtain sewing great-grandmother. Quoted in her own words about the song Ready For It from her 2017 album Reputation, Swift refers to her fondness for this kind of crime and punishment metaphor about robbers and thieves and heists and all that, which is basically like finding your partner in crime. Let's rob banks together. The rap-inflected song features lyrics like, "Knew he was a killer first time that I saw him / wonder how many girls he had loved and left haunted / but if he's a ghost, then I could be a phantom holding him for ransom." The Lonely House. Swift's robbers and heists terminology brought to mind a poem that surprised me the day I entered Dickinson's bedroom. I know some lonely houses off the road / a robber like the look of, with its references to windows hanging low and a portico / where two could creep, one hand the tools, the other peep, to make sure all's asleep. The stanzas that follow could be from a whimsical ghost story for children. There's a clock in the kitchen by night, but they could gag the tick, and mice won't bark, and so the walls don't tell none will. Who else but Dickinson could imagine two thieves gagging the tick of the kitchen clock? According to these fevered days, although Emily avoided ever using the word nightmare, she created one in a poem letter from early 1964 to her beloved sister-in-law, Susan Gilbert, that begins, "One need not be a chamber to be haunted. One need not be a house. The brain has corridors, surpass a material place." Taylor's Nightmare. From in her own words, circa 2014, "The sheer number of men we have a file who have showed up at my house or my mom's house, threatened to kill me, kidnap me, or marry me. This is the strange and sad part of my life that I try not to think about. The dream and nightmare of being framed. I could do nothing wrong. I could sit in my house with the cats all day